Oh, look at you. This is your aura. Your creativity grows and evolves. Your aura will change to reflect your activities. You can become a specialist at one aspect of dreams, or dabble in every area as you like. It can also help others find you, so you can combine your talents and make something amazing together.
Connie's hosting a talent contest to find the best characters in the Dreamiverse. But she's a no-nonsense judge, and none of these candidates are up to scratch. Of course, Cuthbert's no use, so let's see if we can come up with something to impress her. Head into the dressing room, also known as edit mode, to get started. In this tutorial, we'll be customizing the appearance of a puppet. So we'll need a blank canvas to start. Go to the Assembly menu and open the Gadgets menu. Now open the Gameplay Gear menu. In here, find the Blank Puppet Deluxe. The Deluxe version is the perfect starting point for making characters. Select it with X and a blue mannequin will appear on your imp. It has built-in features like jump and possession animations, which the basic version doesn't have. Connie won't be impressed by a basic puppet, so make sure you select the right one. Stamp the deluxe puppet in the scene with R2 or X. Get its feet roughly on the floor, but make sure they aren't intersecting with it. Then press the circle button to unequip the puppet from your imp. If you need to, you can grab and adjust the puppet with R2. In the next step, we'll start exploring the puppet's inner workings. The puppet might look simple, but it's quite a complex gadget. So let's get to know it a little better. It's made up of many objects that have been grouped together. And just like any other group, it can be scoped into. Hover over the puppet with your imp, press and hold L1, and then press X to scope in. Below the puppet, you will now see its base and its logic microchip. If they're obscured by the floor, you may need to scope out and adjust your puppet's position. The puppet's body is made of sculptures, joined together with connectors. When scoped in, we can grab parts of the puppet to change its pose. Before we do that, find the button called Puppet Mirror in the context menu. Select this button with X, and your puppet will stay symmetrical when you pose it. Of course, you don't have to make it symmetrical, but it's a good way to start. You can always add nuance later. When you move a part of the puppet, all the parts connected to it will also move. The root of the puppet is the pelvis, and every other part is connected in a hierarchy from there. For example, moving the upper arm will move the lower arm and the hand as well. But if you move the pelvis, the whole puppet will move. Its feet will try to stay in contact with the floor. So if you lower the pelvis, the puppet's knees will bend. You can also rotate parts by grabbing them with L2. Use R2 and L2 to create a new pose for the puppet. Changing the pose can be a great starting point for a character. The pose could be confident, sad, scared, or aggressive. Don't forget, you can undo any changes with the left directional button if you make a mistake. Use the grab cam to adjust your pose from different angles. Just hold R1 over the puppet to activate it. When you've finished posing your puppet, move on to the next step. Now we've posed our puppet, we can start adjusting its proportions. To do that, we're going to use the stretch tool. Go to the Assembly menu, then open the Tools menu. Select the Stretch tool. It's the one that looks like a double-ended arrow. The Stretch tool works like the Move tool in a lot of ways. But with the Stretch tool, you can move parts of the puppet beyond the limits of the connectors. Try grabbing and moving the puppet's head. Notice the way the neck elongates and shortens. Now try it on the hands. This changes the length of the upper and lower arm. Some body parts respond differently to the Stretch tool. For instance, if you move the upper arms, the shoulders will broaden and the chest will expand. You can also scale parts of the puppet using the up and down directional buttons. I'd only recommend doing this to the puppet's extremities though, the head, hands and feet. Puppets are delicate contraptions, and extreme scaling and stretching can make them behave unexpectedly. But if anything does go skew-whiff, just undo it using the left directional button. If you know how to use sculpt mode, you could try scoping into the individual body parts to change their shape. You can find a whole tutorial on sculpting in the art tutorials. Have a play around with stretching and scaling and see what you can create. Try making the puppet more cartoony or turn it into a monster. Test out your puppet in play mode to see it in motion. When you're done, return to edit mode. Rewind time with L3 to get your puppet back in position. In the next step, I'll show you how to colour and stylize your puppet. Next step, I'll show you how to colour and stylize your puppet. Another way of customizing your puppet's appearance is by changing its colour. We can do this by tinting it in coat mode. If you've played my tutorial on coat, style and effects, you'll
Acércate. Porque el bosque te llama. Entra y no tengas miedo. Bienvenido a hogar. Aunque el corazón se desvanezca, el amor permanece. Levántate y sé animado. Tu alma vivirá para adelante. es eterno. Siempre dormirá. Pero por siempre en Dreams.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-ending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office. All of his co-workers were gone, What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Oh, goodness. I do believe he's lost his way. Now, between you and me, I don't think he stood a chance in the first place. But he's having such a grand time here in these hallways. Why should we bother him? Yes, it's all very amusing. And we laugh, and we call our friends over, and they laugh too, and soon the whole world laughs and laughs and laughs at the man who failed. But of course, that isn't for you. You, sitting there. What have you gained? Do you know this man? Do you know anything about him? Oh, of course not. Now, if I could truly put you in his shoes to show you the paths he walked and the choices he made, but we both know that isn't possible. Not yet. Soon, you will be the one to walk. The controls will be in your hands. Soon, we will find out if your friends turn and laugh at you, just as they did with him. Oh, I think I'm going to enjoy this. When you find out how alone you truly are, I will be laughing more than anyone. Very soon now. But there's a twist. Are you ready for it? Watch him closely, because in and amongst his aimless meandering, I think he's actually beginning to discover something. He's getting closer to an answer, an explanation, an exit. He is beginning to earn his freedom. The end is nearly here. Let's play, everyone. Let's all play. I'll find out when it's time to play the game, which for members of the internet. Those not from the internet are advised to disregard this message, and more importantly, go down to your local electronics retail outlet and get with the times already. To those whom this message concerns, good to see you. I've been off the radar a bit long, haven't I? And I know how hard this lonely period has been on you. But I'm so terribly busy working on a story that I think you'll just die for. You see, I was upset to learn that many players found the original Stanley Parable to be confusing and contradictory. A far cry from the simple story of hope and redemption I had intended it to be. So to rectify this mistake, I'm taking steps to ensure that this updated version will be streamlined to remove any incoherent plot lines. Expect every new piece of content to seamlessly answer all the questions you may have been left with after playing the first game. It's my hope that this installment will fix the somewhat embarrassing mistakes of the original while proving definitively to the world that a video game can make you cry. And I know our mutual friend Stanley would be devastated if he were left out, which is why he's graciously volunteered to star in it once again. Or I'm sure he will anyway. But until we ask him to make that choice, I offer you this and future updates, and I remind you that one's time is better spent living than waiting. After all, with so many doors to prepare, it could be quite some time before this story is fully cooked. So, go out and be productive. Make some choices. Enjoy the hours you have left. Perhaps you could even spare a thought for Stanley, sitting there with nothing but himself and his buttons, day after day. He's been getting rather comfortable, I think, as humans tend to do when the scenery stops changing. And for the moment, we'll let him stay that way. After all, you and I both know things are about to change rather drastically. I wouldn't want to ruin the surprise for either of you. But you'll find out. You'll find out when it's time to play the game again. I recently received an email from a man named Raphael, who writes, "I just played your game, and I'd like to say it was the most annoying thing I ever played. It had its cool moments, but overall the experience was only of annoyance. The problem is that it does not touch the heart of people. It's a very emotionless game. Did you ask any girls to try out your game? I ask because they are blissfully less logical than us guys. I am very logical myself, but also very emotional. So it was easy for me to find the game annoying. What happened is that your game frustrated me. I felt like I was being taken into someone else's hallways, doors and plans to deliver me an experience that didn't touch me. And worst of all, I had absolutely no free will in the game. No way to change anything, no impact, no power. I accomplished nothing. People play games because of what they can do inside them, and your game is very good at letting them know they can't do anything. Other things I didn't like were the amount of narrator dialogue too much, and that Stanley is repeated all the time by the narrator. Overall, your game is on a good path, I think. Good luck with it, and best regards, Raphael." You know, Raphael, at first your negative response to the game devastated me. After all, I managed to squeeze so many emotions into the first game. How could a logical yet emotional person like yourself have been disappointed? But then I realized that much to the contrary, your emotional standard is simply much higher than a normal human being's. So I've come to think of you as a mentor, an emotional beacon toward which I might sail my wayward narrative ship. That's why I've discarded the Stanley Parable as it previously existed and rebuilt it from the ground up to capture not just many emotions, but all emotions. And I think few would disagree that it's a significant step up. Why don't I take you on a little demo walkthrough?